The night of my accident was supposed to be ordinary. A late shift at work had left me exhausted, eager to collapse into bed the moment I got home. The roads were dark and quiet, almost peaceful. Then, in an instant, everything changed. Bright headlights. The deafening screech of brakes failing. A sudden, crushing impact. My car spun out of control, metal twisting and shattering around me. For a few terrifying seconds as I braced for the worst, one thought echoed in my mind. This is it. At first, the pain was distant, almost unreal. Then it hit me all at once. A deep, suffocating agony that crawled up my chest, sharp jolts searing through my ribs and leg. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And all I could think was, I don't want to die here. Somehow, with trembling fingers, I reached for my phone and dialed 911. My voice was barely more than a whisper. Please. I need help. The dispatcher's voice was calm, reassuring. Stay with me. We're sending someone now. I clung to consciousness, fighting against the overwhelming dizziness. Just a little longer, I told myself. And then, nothing. When I woke, the rhythmic beeping of hospital monitors filled the silence. Pain was the first thing I felt, a deep, all-consuming ache in my ribs and leg. The second was the emptiness of the room. No family sitting by my bedside. No familiar voices offering comfort. Just the cold hum of machinery and the distant murmur of nurses in the hallway. A doctor stood nearby, flipping through my chart. She glanced at me, offering a small, professional smile. You're awake. That's a good sign. My throat was dry, my voice hoarse. What happened? She sighed. You were in a severe car accident. 3 fractured ribs, a broken leg, some internal bleeding. We managed to stabilize you, but you'll need time to recover. I nodded slowly, letting the weight of her words settle in my chest. And then I asked the question that changed everything. Did my parents come? The doctor hesitated just for a second. That pause told me everything before she even spoke. We called them immediately after your surgery. They were informed. I waited, my heart hammering in my chest. She cleared her throat. They didn't show up. For 2 days I waited. Every time a nurse or doctor walked in, my heart leapt with hope, thinking maybe, just maybe, my parents had finally arrived. But they never did. I kept my phone by my side, staring at the screen, waiting for a call. A text. Anything. Still nothing. On the 3rd day, a family friend came to visit, bringing fresh clothes and snacks. Desperate for answers, I asked, Do you know where my parents are? She hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything. Just tell me, I whispered. I need to know. She sighed, looking guilty. They're at your brother's awards ceremony? I blinked, certain I had misheard. What? They left the morning after your accident. Your dad said it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for your brother? And well, you were already stable. Stable condition. Like I was just some inconvenient afterthought. Like I hadn't just barely survived. Like my pain didn't matter at all. Something inside me snapped. This wasn't new. This wasn't a one-time thing. My parents had always treated my brother as the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. He was the star athlete, the honor roll student, the one they bragged about to friends and family. And me? I was just there. No matter what I achieved, it was never enough. Won a regional science competition? Barely acknowledged. Earned a scholarship for college? Told my brother's football game was more important. Graduated with honors? My brother was the real success story. And now, even when I was lying in a hospital bed, struggling to recover, he still came first. That night, I picked up my phone and stared at the empty message thread. Then, with shaking fingers, I typed. I know you chose his award ceremony over me. You didn't even call to check if I was okay. I needed you and you weren't there. I hit send. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Then a whole night. Silence. Because even acknowledging my pain wasn't worth their time. Lying in that hospital bed, staring at the empty phone screen, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not just anger. Not just sadness. Clarity. For the first time, I stopped making excuses for them. For the first time, I saw my parents for who they really were. Because the truth was right in front of me. I had almost died. And they didn't care. The next morning, my phone finally buzzed. A message from my mother. I'm sorry we couldn't be there. We didn't think it was that serious. I stared at it. Not that serious. 3 fractured ribs. A broken leg. Internal bleeding. And my mother made it sound like I had caught a mild cold. A few hours later, my family friend returned to check on me. I asked, tell me everything. Where were they really? She hesitated, but then finally admitted, your dad didn't even hesitate when the hospital called. He said, she's stable, right? We'll visit when we can. My stomach dropped. She continued, Then they packed their bags and left for your brother's ceremony. They didn't even tell the hospital when they'd be back. They didn't think it was serious. Or rather, they didn't care enough to find out. Hearing that my dad immediately prioritized my brother wasn't surprising. It had always been this way. When I got sick as a child, they sent a babysitter while they took my brother to his soccer game. When I cried for their attention, they told me to stop being dramatic. When I needed them most, they were never there. And now, after nearly losing my life, nothing had changed. But I had. Because as I lay in that hospital bed, surrounded by the steady beep of machines and the emptiness of a family that never truly saw me, I finally understood. I would never be their priority. And I was done pretending I ever would be. The night I finally confronted my father, I needed to hear it from him. I needed to hear in his own words why I didn't matter. When he picked up, his voice was calm, casual, as if nothing had happened. "Hey kiddo. How are you feeling?" I clenched my jaw. "You tell me, Dad. How do you think I'm feeling after almost dying and being left alone in a hospital for days?" Silence. Then a sigh. "Look, I know you're upset, but your brother's award ceremony was a big deal. He worked so hard for it." My grip on the phone tightened. "And I fought for my life in an ER. But I guess that doesn't compare, does it?" "Don't be dramatic," he scoffed. "You're fine now." That was it. That was the moment I realized I was done. I took a slow, deep breath, my voice steady. "I don't think you understand, Dad. This was your last chance. I needed you and you weren't there. I could have died and you wouldn't have even known until it was too late." More silence. "Enjoy your golden child. I'm done being the forgotten one." And then I hung up. For the first time in my life I felt lighter. Because I wasn't fighting for their love anymore. I was choosing myself. I thought maybe I'd feel guilt, doubt, regret. But I didn't. I felt free. For years, I had been chasing their approval, begging for scraps of their attention, convincing myself that if I just worked hard enough, if I was just good enough, one day they'd finally see me. But now I knew the truth. I was never going to be their priority. And I was done trying to be. A week after the accident, I was finally discharged. A friend had agreed to pick me up, and as I sat in a wheelchair near the hospital entrance, waiting, a car pulled up. My parents. For the first time in over a week, they had finally decided to show up. But the moment I saw them step out, awkward smiles, fake concern plastered across their faces, I knew. This wasn't about me. It was about them. My mother rushed over first, arms outstretched. "Oh, honey, we've been so worried." I didn't move. Didn't blink. "Really? You didn't seem that worried a week ago." She hesitated, guilt flashing in her eyes before she swallowed it down. My father stepped forward next. "Look, we know we should have come sooner, but..." He stopped himself. And in that hesitation I saw it. They weren't here because they regretted leaving me alone in that hospital bed. They weren't here because they loved me. They were here because they needed something. I crossed my arms. "Cut the crap. Why are you really here?" For a moment, they exchanged glances, like they were trying to figure out the best way to spin their lie. And then my mother sighed, glancing at my father before finally blurting out, "Your brother needs help?" I laughed. A dry, bitter laugh. Because of course this wasn't about me. "Let me guess," I said, my voice sharp. "He got himself into trouble, and now you need me to clean up his mess?" My father rubbed his temples like this whole conversation was exhausting for him. "It's not that simple," he muttered. "Your brother is in a bit of a situation." I stared at him. "What kind of situation?" That's when my mother finally confessed. "He's been arrested." Turns out the golden child wasn't so perfect after all. While I had been lying in a hospital bed, fighting to recover, my brother had been getting himself arrested for fraud. He had been caught embezzling money from his company. And now he needed bail money. And guess who they expected to pay for it? Me. My mother tried to soften the blow, reaching for my hand. "Sweetheart, you know we don't have that kind of money. But you've always been so responsible, so smart with your finances." I yanked my hand away. So responsible, so smart. Funny how that never mattered until you needed something. She blinked as if she hadn't expected me to fight back. "It's just a loan, honey. Family helps family." I scoffed. Did family help me when I was in the hospital? Did family show up when I needed them? Silence. Then my dad, in classic fashion, crossed his arms and gave me his usual disappointed look. "I didn't raise you to be selfish." That was it. That was the moment I snapped. I took a deep breath, my voice calm, firm, without hesitation. "You didn't raise me at all. You raised him. I was just there." Their faces went pale. "I'm not giving you a cent. Not for him." Not for you. Not ever. My mother's eyes filled with tears. But he's your brother? No. I cut her off, my voice cold. He's your son. And he's your problem. Then I stepped back, taking one last look at them. I hope his award was worth it. And with that, I turned around, got into my friend's car, and drove away. I left them and their golden child behind forever. Driving away should have been painful. I should have felt guilt, doubt, something. But I didn't. For the first time in my life, I wasn't justifying their behavior. I wasn't waiting for them to love me the way I deserved. I was finally choosing myself. And the moment I walked into my apartment, I knew. I wasn't going back. But my parents? They weren't done with me yet. The moment I shut my door, my phone started buzzing non-stop. 10 missed calls from Mom. 5 from Dad. 3 from an unknown number, probably my brother. Then the text started. Mom, you're making a mistake. Don't let anger cloud your judgment. Just think about what your brother is going through. Dad, this is family. You'll regret turning your back on us. I didn't reply. Because where were these messages when I was lying alone in a hospital bed? Where was this urgency when I was waiting for them to show up? They didn't care about me. They just cared about what I could do for them. 2 days later, I was getting groceries when I saw them. My parents. Standing outside my apartment building. The moment I saw them standing outside my apartment building waiting for me, my stomach twisted. A part of me wanted to turn around to pretend I didn't see them. But I refused to run. I was done running. I walked up, grocery bags in hand, and raised an eyebrow. Still begging for money? My mother let out a dramatic sigh, placing a hand over her chest like some tragic heroine. Sweetheart, we just want to talk. I tilted my head. You already talked. And I already said no. Her face twisted in frustration. Why are you being so cruel? This isn't like you. I scoffed. You don't know what I'm like, Mom. You never paid enough attention to find out. She flinched like I had slapped her. My father stepped in then, his voice calm and measured, like he was the rational one here. Listen, you're still upset about the hospital, but holding on to anger won't fix anything. I took a slow, deep breath and met his gaze. I'm not angry. And that was the truth. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Something shifted in my father's expression. He had expected me to yell, to break down, to lash out. But my calmness? My indifference? That he didn't know how to handle. His patience snapped. His voice dropped, turning cold. After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us? A bitter laugh escaped me. Everything you've done for me? Like what? Ignoring me my whole life? Prioritizing my brother at every turn? My mother teared up, shaking her head. We love you, sweetheart. You don't understand. No, I cut her off. You don't understand. I almost died and you didn't care. But the second your golden boy screws up, you expect me to fix it? Silence. Then my father took a step forward, his jaw tight. You'll regret this. I met his stare head on. No, Dad. The only regret I have is that it took me this long to walk away. And with that, I stepped past them, unlocked my door, and shut it in their faces. That night, I blocked their numbers. I deleted every text, every voicemail, every trace of them from my life. And you know what? Felt amazing. Because for the first time, they had to face the consequences of their choices. Without me, they had no one left to turn to. For the first few weeks, the silence was deafening. No texts. No calls. No guilt-tripping emails. Then it started. They couldn't handle the fact that I had truly cut them off. At first, my mother played nice. Mom, we miss you, sweetheart. Let's talk, okay? Family is more important than a little misunderstanding. I didn't respond. Then the real manipulation began. Mom, you're breaking my heart. Do you really hate us that much? Your brother is suffering. I hope you can live with yourself knowing you could have helped. Dad, you think you're punishing us, but you're only hurting yourself. I read every message. Then I deleted them. Without replying. Because I wasn't going to play their game anymore. A month after I cut them off, I got a text from an old high school friend. Friend, holy crap. Have you seen the news? Confused, I checked online. And there it was. My brother's face plastered across the local news. Fraud charges filed against prominent businessman. Turns out he wasn't just guilty of some small-time fraud. No, my perfect brother had been part of a major scheme, embezzling money, falsifying documents, getting involved with some very shady people. His bail? Set at $100,000. And the best part? My parents had been counting on me to pay it. But I was gone. And they were out of options. After the news broke, I knew what was coming. Sure enough, 50+ missed calls. Desperate voicemails. Emails begging for help. And finally, a handwritten letter slipped under my apartment door. For a second I hesitated. Then curiosity won. It was from my mother. "We made mistakes, but we're still family. Please don't let your brother rot in jail. We need you." I stared at the paper. Then I tore it in half and threw it in the trash. Because the woman who wrote that letter? She wasn't my mother anymore. And my brother? He was just a stranger. My parents had spent a lifetime prioritizing him over me. And now, the son they poured everything into was dragging them straight to hell with him. His business partners cut ties. His fiancée left him. His case went federal. And suddenly it wasn't just bail money they needed. They needed a miracle. And I didn't care. Not one bit. Because while they were drowning in legal fees, watching their golden child fall apart, I was finally living. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living in his shadow. I wasn't the backup child. The forgotten daughter. The one who was only useful when they needed something. I was finally free. And as my parents' world collapsed, I didn't feel sorry for them. I felt nothing at all. A few weeks after my brother's case exploded in the media, I received an email from my father. At first, I almost deleted it without reading. But curiosity got the best of me. "Dad, your mother isn't doing well. The stress of everything is making her sick. We don't want money. We just want to talk." I stared at the screen. And then I laughed. Because these people? They weren't sorry. They weren't reaching out because they loved me. They were reaching out because they had lost control over me. And they couldn't stand it. I took a deep breath, typed a response, and sent it without hesitation. "You had a daughter, but you chose to treat me like I didn't exist. Now I'm choosing the same for you. Don't contact me again." Then I blocked their emails. I changed my number. I made sure there was no way for them to reach me. Ever again. And you know what? My life became so much better. Without their constant disappointment, I focused on my career, and finally got the promotion I had worked my ass off for. I found real friends. Ones who actually cared about me, not just my brother's accomplishments. And I met someone who saw me as an equal. Not as a second choice. Most importantly, I found peace. No guilt. No anger. No lingering sadness. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had walked away. And never looked back. They thought I'd always be there. That I'd always be waiting for them to finally choose me. But I wasn't waiting anymore. Because while they were stuck trying to fix the mess they created, I was already moving forward. And that was the best revenge of all.